Hello, welcome to the Gym RPG show. So the PC Build Diary series is really a series of videos where I'm looking at a lot of different PC builds, and sometimes they might be gaming PCs. Today it's going to be a productivity and video editing machine. So we'll put some parts together. Hopefully we can make a machine that is reasonably value conscious and also will perform as needed to. But before I do that, let's take a quick look at the gaming PC that I built a couple of weeks ago now in the first episode of this series, and that was this gaming PC one here. And as you can see in this list, obviously I wasn't going to get a 3900X or the 2070 Super. That was supposed to be a 5900X and a 3080, and then the price was going to be around about $2,300. So I have a few changes that I would actually make if I were to get this PC now. So some of this is from the YouTube comments that I got from the video, and also there are other things that I read in the last couple of weeks that made me change my mind on a few of these parts. So firstly, I did change the cooler here, but I don't think it really matters that much. What really matters is what size of cooler you choose, so whether you go with a 240 or a 280. The 240s are around about $100 to $120, and then the 280s are around $140. So if the price is very close, you may as well go to a 280. But what I've got here is a Corsair H100i, and that's $106 here. But honestly, that could be a different price in your country. So really what you should be doing is shopping around so that you get the best deal, whether you go with a 240 or a 280. I also changed the SSD because I don't actually have a Sabrent Q available in my country. So I've just gone with the ADATA XPG, and it's around about the same price. And if you can't find that one, I've also got here listed a PNY XLR8 CS3030, and that's pretty much about the same speed as that ADATA XPG SX8200. So you could get either one, but normally they would be around about that price, about $130. If you go with a Samsung 970 EVO, that's probably going to set you back another $20 on top of that, and it's pretty much the same price and performance. So I guess that depends on how much you want to spend there. Now, one of the bigger changes that I made was the case, and I've gone with the P500A, and that's because with the P400A case that I had in the last video, that case doesn't actually have support for a 240 or a 280 top-mounted radiator, because in the P400A, the radiator sits a little bit too close if you top-mount it, so it has to be mounted on the front of the case. Okay, so they're the changes that I would make if I was to get this 5900X and 3080 PC, but to be quite honest with you guys, I think I'm almost considering not getting the 3080 right now for two specific reasons. One is, of course, that it has 10 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, a lot of people will say 10 gigabytes is enough, but for me, I like to buy a card that's going to give me a little bit more longevity. Also, as long as it's not a significant overpay for that extra VRAM, then I will just get the card with the more VRAM, because right now the AMD 6800 XT has 16 gigabytes of VRAM for a lower price than the 3080. So surely Nvidia will have to counter with something soon, whether that's going to be a $599 3080, or maybe they bring their price down for a potential 3080 Ti with 20 gigabytes of VRAM. So unfortunately, I think my gaming PC is completely up in the air right now. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen to it. I think I will at least wait till January, because that seems as though that's when the 3080 Ti is going to be released. And yeah, I guess we'll just wait and see what happens after that. So that's the gaming PC. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention last week was that I'm also considering getting a productivity or video editing machine. Now, a lot of people might think, well, why would I want to get two of them? Why don't you just use the same PC? And that's because I have a second location where I can actually record my YouTube videos. And honestly, there are a lot of distractions where I am currently recording my videos right now. So if I was to do recording at the second location, I would need a second PC. Now, some people would say, well, why don't you just get a laptop? And for the very simple reason is that I don't really like laptops at all. I think they're perfectly fine if you're doing some word processing or spreadsheets and that sort of work. But for anything else, if you're gaming or you're doing video editing where you need a better CPU, then I think it's much better to just buy a desktop PC. So that's part of the reason why when I did the gaming PC video, I knew that I couldn't overspend on that gaming PC, knowing that I had to still save up for a second PC. So anyways, let's take a look at this productivity video editing PC. And the first part that I have is a 3900X. And I know a lot of people say, but wait, the 5900X just came out, why wouldn't you buy that? And you'd be absolutely correct, because I haven't really finalized whether I want to go with a 3900X or a 5900X, because a lot of it depends on the price of the 3900X and also the price of the 5900X. In my country, the 5900X will probably be around about $650. So if the 3900X stays at around $430, well, then that's a pretty solid deal. For $200 difference, I would probably get maybe 20% less performance, but that'd be okay because my current PC, the one that I actually need to upgrade from, is an i5 4690K, and the 3900X would be at least 3 times better than what I've currently got anyway. Probably more than 3 times, because this is a 12-core 24-thread CPU, and the i5 4690K is 4 cores, 4 threads. And even before you take into account any of the speed differences and the IPC differences, that would just blow it away anyway. Now the thing is, would the 5900X with the 20% extra speed benefit me over the 3900X? Well, I think for a productivity video editing machine, I think I could live without that extra 20%. And I think that's because if, for example, if the 3900X renders a video in 10 minutes, then the 5900X will do it in, say, 8 minutes. Will the 2 minutes make a big difference? I think in the long run, it'll be a little bit annoying, but I don't think it will be that bad. Whereas for the i5 4690K, if I was still editing videos on that, that would be over 30 minutes, 45 minutes long. So that's a big difference already, and I'm willing to sacrifice that final 20% for that extra $200 that I save, and maybe I can put that into better parts for my gaming PC, and who knows, maybe I'll get a 3080 Ti instead. So I'm not really sure until I hit that buy button whether I'm going to get a 3900X or a 5900X. I think if the 3900X is cheap enough, I might go with that. Or even if there is a 9900K from Intel that's like, say, $300, maybe I'll consider that. But right now, the 3900X for $400 seems like a pretty good deal. So for the CPU cooler, I'm skimping again, and I'm going to go with a PureRock 2 CPU cooler. And this is a standard tower cooler, so nothing too exciting here. But it's definitely a lot cheaper than your water cooling solution. So that's what I'm going to go with here. And for $40, again, I don't mind too much if it downclocks a little bit because it gets too hot. This cooler is rated for 150 TDP, which is more than the 3900X, which has a TDP of 105 watts. So that should be fine, I think. And if it's not as cool as the liquid cooler, well, so be it. For the motherboard, I've gone with the cheapest ATX motherboard that has decent VRMs that I could find, which was the MSI B550A Pro, and that has some pretty nice features, including BIOS flashback, which is really important. You need that if you don't have the previous gen CPU. So if you were going to buy the 5900X, you would need a BIOS flashback for that 5900X CPU to work. So I've included the B550A because it has that function there. And also for me, I really need a ATX board because for a video editing machine, I need 2 NVMe slots. So as I guess expandable storage, because the amount of storage that I got, which is 1 terabyte, is really not enough for a video editing PC, and I need room to expand a little bit. And while I can expand through the SATA ports, it's much faster storage on NVMe. So that's why I want to go with the ATX boards here. And there are some MATX boards that are much cheaper than this MSI B550A ATX board. But with those M-ATX boards, you don't get 2 PCIe slots, so you won't be able to expand your storage later. So that would be something to watch out for. For the memory, I've gone with 64 gigabytes of memory, particularly for a video editing machine, more so than for a gaming PC. You want as much memory as possible. And it's better to go with as much memory as you can now so that you can leave some room later on and be able to upgrade your memory later on down the track. Also, just a quick note about the speed of this memory. In my previous video, there was a comment about using higher speed memory, so 3600, because now Ryzen 5000, the Infinity fabric there clocks to 4000 megahertz, and so that if you have your RAM at 4000, then it's 1-to-1 with the Infinity fabric clock speed. I think I got that right. But anyway, you can go right up to 4000 megahertz, although AMD still recommends that the sweet spot is 3600, and that's to do with the pricing of the VRAM and also with the internal timings of the RAM. So maybe at 4000 it's not as tightly timed as, say, the 3600 memory. So AMD still recommended the sweet spot at 3600. Now that's for Ryzen 5000 series or Zen 3 CPUs. So if I was to get a Ryzen 5000, I would look for 3600 megahertz speed memory. But again, it really depends on the price of it. And I'm not gaming anyway, so it's not going to affect my frame rate. So 3200 seems fine to me. If it's a little bit slower, it's not a big deal for a video editing PC. And if anyone asks, the speed of the memory is more important than your timings. So if you were to choose between, say, a 3600 with a timing of CL18, well, you'd probably want to go with the 3618 rather than the 3200 with CL16. For the SSD, I've gone with something really cheap, but it's still an NVMe solid-state drive. So I've gone with a Crucial P2. Now, the difference between the P1 and the P2 SSDs is that the P1 has a DRAM, but it's QLC flash memory, and the P2 has no DRAM, but it is a TLC memory. So the TLC memory is a bit better. I don't know how it's going to play out without the DRAM. I think I still need to research it a little bit more, but they're the same price. So again, I probably need to research a little bit more on that SSD. But either way, I don't want to spend too much on this SSD, knowing that I guess in a year's time or so, there'll be better SSDs coming out. It will drive the prices of these SSDs down, and then I will just upgrade at a later stage. And so I want to use this SSD for as long as I can, and then once I'm full, then I will go and upgrade again. For the video card, I just wanted to put something really simple in there, and I don't think it's going to be a 5500 XT. I will put something else down the line, but this is kind of like a placeholder video card with 8GB of VRAM so that I can use that for my video editing. And actually, funny story, I tried to edit videos at my office PC and I've only got integrated graphics there, and I was about 20 seconds into editing a video and DaVinci Resolve said it ran out of GPU memory. So I guess it's really important to have that video card for editing videos. For the case, I'm going with a P400A again, so that was the case that won the Gamers Nexus Case of the Year award. So I'm just going to trust them because they seem to know what they're talking about when it comes to airflow and cases. And I won't have that issue with the top mounted radiator. So because I've got that Be Quiet tower cooler, this should be no problems for this P400A. And I could even, I guess, go with a P300, but I'm just worried that it's going to be a little bit small, so there's only a saving of about $10, $15 there if I went to a P300, so I've just gone with the P400A. And I went with the one with no RGB because I wanted to save money. And finally, for a PC with basically no GPU, I've gone with a 650 watt Corsair power supply. I would probably prefer to get a gold supply, but I think for now, the bronze supply is cheap enough that I will just go with that for now because I really need to save money for this. If I went with a gold supply, that would be about $100. And so I'm willing to take that risk because this power supply is only $65. And Corsair makes pretty decent power supplies, and I use them for the office PCs at work, the ones that I build for work, so they seem to be alright. So altogether, this comes to a total of about $1,200. Now, I was hoping to get the whole lot down to $1,000, but it seems like it's not really going to be possible given that I've got big items in there like the 64 gigabytes of memory there for $220. There's no other way to reduce that cost unless I go with 32 gigabytes of memory, but that would also mean that I couldn't upgrade to 128 gigabytes later, so I think it's better for me to go with 64 gigabytes now. And another place I could skimp would be the 3900X, and again I could go with a 9900K for like $350. It really depends on how much that is, but I think you get an extra 4 cores and 8 threads with the 3900X, and it seems as though that's probably a better deal for an extra $100. Okay, so just finally I want to touch on the differences between these first two PCs that I built, the gaming PC and the work PC. So with the gaming PC, it's obviously important to have a really good CPU with a very high single core speed. And that's why for that gaming PC, even though I had a 5900X in there, I'm almost thinking about putting a 10A50K because the 10A50K is $450 and the 5900X is $600. So it would be a $150 saving, and there wouldn't be that much of a difference. There is the 10 cores on the 10A50K and the 12 cores on the 3900X, but in gaming you probably wouldn't end up using that many number of cores and threads, so that's not going to happen for a while. And I think for the $150 you save there, maybe you could put that into something else. Maybe you could put that into like your 3080 Ti. So I think I'm considering the 10A50K there for the gaming PC. But going back to the differences between the work PC and the gaming PC, it's not so much about buying the latest parts that will last the longest, and because you have to pay a premium for these parts. But I think it's more important to get value out of, say, a work PC than it is to, say, getting a gaming PC. But it's also important to strike that balance between getting the parts that you need and just cheaping out on stuff, because I wouldn't get a 3600 for video editing. Even though the 3600 has a really good price to performance ratio, the 3900X is double the price, but it does double the work. But also you're going to be putting in $1,000 into your PC anyway. So if you're going to put $1,000 into your 3600 PC or $1,200 into your 3900X PC, then you may as well go with that 3900X. Also, note the difference between the gaming PC motherboard and the work PC motherboard here. So for the gaming PC, I use an X570, and then the work PC, I use a B550. And that's because for the gaming PC, the most important thing about the X570 is that it has 2 PCI Gen 4 slots, but the B550 only has 1 Gen 4 slots. So especially with these next-gen games touting that they're going to have Gen 4 SSD speeds, I think having that extra second slot on the X570 makes that worth the little bit of extra money and allows you to upgrade down the line. For the work PC, I got a cheaper cooler because it doesn't matter so much if I'm downclocked on the CPU when I'm rendering a video, because that just means that it's going to finish a minute or 2 minutes slower. But in a video game, it might be annoying if the FPS is not as high as I want it to be. The SSD in the gaming PC, I've gone with a faster speed SSD there, so that will help with gaming, whereas it doesn't matter so much on the work PC. And finally, I got a bit better case in the gaming PC than I did on my work PC. But overall, I'm still trying to reduce the cost of this down a little bit. So for the work PC, I'm really looking at this machine being about $1,000, and for the gaming PC, I'd really like that to be around $2,000, maybe I guess $2,200 if you add in all the taxes and everything. Altogether, I think it's going to be about $3,500. That's still really expensive for me, so I guess it's time to look out for deals, try to make this thing a little bit cheaper if I can. Okay, so let me know what you think of this build for both the video editing PC and also the gaming PC from the week before. I really enjoy these type of videos because I get to just casually talk about building PCs. And in a way, they're almost like a blog for me, so they're kind of therapeutic in that sort of sense. Okay, so that's going to be it for this one. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.